It's a Friday morning and you tuned into your feel-good breakfast show, Expresso on S3. And right now, time for us to get clued up on the news headlines with our editor, Roy Simpson. Now, we encourage you, of course, at home to join in on the discussion. What are your thoughts on today's headlines? WhatsApp us your voice notes to 063 408 8863. You'll remember that this week, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana delivered his budget speech on Wednesday. Now, on Monday, we looked at what was in it. And so today, let's take a look and talk about the implications, especially how we can expect things to play out in the future. We know that one of the biggest issues right now that we're facing is the energy crisis, a massive one at that, and a massive bailout has been given to Eskom. Roy, in the region of 200 and... Just say that, I want to do this while you say that.
Massive. 254 billion South African rand.
That's a lot of money.
It is.
That's a lot of money. How deep are the troubles that we are currently facing? I mean, they are deep, but does this amount of money essentially rescue Eskom from the troubles that it is in?
It kind of does in a way. It's a substantial amount of money. It's a big portion of their actual debt. Their debt totals like 400 billion.
Okay.
And this is 255 billion of it.
It's more than half.
Exactly. So it does help in a lot of ways. In another way, though, it's kind of the end of Eskom. So despite what you had David Masondo on your headlines just now going, this is not the privatization of Eskom, in quite a real way it is, because this money comes with very specific caveats and expectations. So one of the things they have to do is they have to use this money firstly to pay off the debt and the interest, which means the revenue that they get. When you and I buy electricity, that's their money to use for infrastructure and for investment. Mm-hmm. But then they have to invest that money in building a grid that can take private participation. Oh, so you've already seen, for example, down in Cape Town, they're talking about buying power off individuals. Yes. The grid has to be completely designed to accept that kind of thing. Okay. And that, I mean, that's privatization in quite a real sense. But by doing that, yes, it does. It's going to take some time to do that, but we'll get to a point where some of the fundamental issues, the stage 6, stage 7 issues we've been dealing with, some of those will go away.
Okay, well, this is good news, I guess, for us as citizens, considering it is our money at the end of the day that's being used now to form this bailout. Now, you mentioned something quite interesting, especially particularly in the Western Cape, that there's this sort of tax incentive now where we're going to get this opportunity to possibly feed back to the grid. You're mentioning part of that infrastructure is going to allow that. Is that something that's going to happen in the near future? And how big is that impact going to be on us?
Well, in terms of timing, yeah, they're kind of wanting that to happen almost instantly. So they've set aside 4 billion rand to incentivize individuals to put solar panels on their roof.
All right.
You'll get a discount, effectively a 25% discount, because you get a tax rebate on that.
Okay.
And it really translates directly to, you can spend anything up to 60,000 rand, and they will give you 15,000 rand of that back in tax.
All right.
So that subsidy happens. And when you think about it, if that's 4 billion and it's only a quarter of what the cost is, I sat and I did the maths because I like to do this sort of thing. If everyone took this up and all 4 billion rand was spent on this tax incentive by individuals, the impact would be somewhere around 1,600 megawatts for 8 hours of the day. So you're closing in on about a Coburg. Let's call it about a Coburg.
We're replacing a Coburg station.
Yeah.
This is huge, right?
It is. This is
a big deal.
This is potentially a game changer.
Wow.
And at the same time, you've got businesses who have a much more complex mathematical model to follow in terms of their rebates. But then they've got much bigger numbers to deal with. We heard, for example, Shoprite spending 600, well, the equivalent of R1 billion a year on diesel.
Just
So for them, they're going to be numbers that make sense. Obviously, it's difficult because they're in malls and things, but for other businesses, this tax incentive for them is going to make sense, and then they're off the grid. We don't need to provide power for them.
And I can't think of many years where there's actually been some positive insight into anything involving Eskom right now. And this, honestly, not, but honestly, this is looking like, hey, there's a potential real near future solution here. Like, that has never been a thing.
You know what I'm wondering right now, right? And I mean, we come from the past that we have, and here we are at the precipice of something really positive, as you're saying. Are there any catches? Are we missing anything in terms of this new incentive, right? So I guess there hasn't been a better time to invest in an alternative energy generating solution for your home. There's a tax incentive at that as well. Is it all just sunshine and roses that way? Are there critical parts of this deal that we need to understand, as in the implications on you as a homeowner if you are going to take up part of this 4 billion rand to install solar or whatever solution that you have in your house?
No, I think individually we're fine. As a homeowner, if you take this up, then it's going to make sense for you. In fact, after about 2.5 years or so, it's going to pay for itself.
Yes.
And then you're left with this asset. As a collective, as the country, we've got real danger signs there, red lights all over the dashboard. For example, those preconditions for this loan, they need to be met. They actually need to be followed through on. So we're relying on Eskom to actually do what government's telling it to do, and that's not guaranteed. So that's a problem. The other is, of course, that money is ours, exactly as you said. We're going to have to pay for that somehow. That 250 billion rand has to come out of taxes, which means...
It's not already available. It still needs to be generated.
and then we don't do other things.
We got to get working, clearly.
Yeah. So there's a big catch for you.
Ryle, you're not working hard enough. Contribute more to the economy, Ryle.
South Africa.
Be more innovative. Start some businesses. All right. Let us know your thoughts on this and the many more headlines that have gotten the nation talking over the past week. 063-408-8863. We'll be back again with Roy Simpson shortly.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. We are still continuing our discussion with Roy Simpson, our news editor, to talk about some of the stories that have had South Africa talking over the past week. Of course, the budget speech being the main focus, and we'd love to hear your opinions as well. So do send us your voice notes on 063-408-8863. So, Roy, as we were saying just now, that there was lots said. The minister left the personal income tax of individuals relatively unchanged. We're good there.
Celebrate that, please.
Social grants increasing slightly, although not to satisfactory levels. The bailing out of state-owned enterprises. What are we missing here? Were there other important things that weren't addressed?
Things that weren't addressed in this budget, there were a couple. Inflation, and we've spoken before about how the Reserve Bank is kind of left to deal with inflation, but it doesn't really have many tools. All it's got is the interest rate. So government needed to do something about, and still needs to do something about, inflation. And we didn't hear anything in this budget about plans to do that. So, for example, the minimum wage is going to be going up by about 9%. There were no corollary tax incentives to kind of ameliorate that, so that doesn't get passed on to you and I as a consumer.
Yeah, because a 9% increase, but 10% increase in inflation really just takes that 9% all the way away. It doesn't matter.
So we needed to hear some positive plans for how are we going to reduce this inflation. Government should have been intervening on that, and I didn't see any of that in the budget, which really bothered me. So that's about the cost of living crisis. That's not being dealt with. The other part of the cost of living crisis is, of course, making money, so jobs. And man, there was almost nothing about jobs in this. I think he mentioned employment 4 times in the entire speech, and mostly in the context of unemployment.
Wow.
So there is 900 billion rand in infrastructure investment, which will create jobs, but there's been nothing specific about incentivizing business to create new jobs. There's no how exactly. There's no sort of laid out plan for dealing with the unemployment problem. And I thought that was quite a big gap in the speech. And then on Monday, of course, we chatted about the basic income grant. So yes, the social grants are going up, but if you look at the 90 rand plus 100 rand, say for old age pensioners, it'll take it up to just over 2,000. So you're looking at a 20th, you're looking at 5%, and you're looking at a group of people whose main expense is food.
Yeah.
And we spoke about food running at 13.4% inflation. So this is under inflation. So those people aren't being serviced in terms of keeping pace with inflation. And so a basic income grant really is needed, and nothing, absolutely nothing about that is indicated in the budget we got. So I think those are 3 big gaps, and they're really important gaps.
And this is obviously the pressure of everyone demanding answers when it comes to Eskom. Obviously, everyone's eyesight and everything we can think of being consumed by this. Do you think it's a fact that our ministers are also being consumed by public sort of pressure in terms of, well, we need to address this first before anything else? So no one's worried. No one's really actually concerned about this. We've got a primary issue to deal with, and that's sort of like Eskom's taken over everything right now. Is that where we're at?
There's an element of it in terms of the sentiment that, yes, we need to deal with that because next year's an election year, for example. But at the same time, you have to recognize that not having reliable power has major implications for the whole economy. So if a ShopRite is spending R1 billion on diesel every year, it's not considering taking on new staff.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that money's coming out of an unexpected expense. And so they'll look at sharpening everything they can, which would include things more like job cuts rather than employment. So I'm afraid Eskom is at the base of everything. So it does need to be dealt with. It's a combination. It's partly the
Rightly
sentiment.
so, yeah.
It's also, though, the reality that we can't actually function as an economy in the modern world without a reliable electricity supply.
Can I put some pressure on you? If I were to appoint you Minister of Possibilities right now, right, looking at perhaps what can we draw from all of this? Is there some kind of positive mindset that we can collectively as a nation frame ourselves in, despite the fact that we, what you've just said right now, given the budget speech, what do we have to look forward to? And how could we be contributing members as a society to that future?
Demanding the right kind of action from government. So in terms of the action we as individuals can take, become part of civil society. There are amazing NGOs out there who are putting the right kinds of pressure on government to deliver things like basic income grants and the same. So don't be an armchair critic.
Yeah.
Get up
involved.
and be an active citizen, because the resources are there. We've been saluting SARS for collecting the revenue. They're collecting 1.6 trillion rand every year.
The efficiency, amazing.
Yeah. So there is this money. We have these resources. We have the creativity. So you put those together. Yes, there is potential. There is possibility, and I'll take the job.
You got my vote, Roy. You got my vote.
South Africa, we present to you the new Minister of Possibility. I think that's a very important key take home. And maybe take with you to work, take with you wherever you go, take with you to family gatherings, to work meetings. Get involved. Find a place, an organization, a group of people that care about the things that you care about, and get involved in the discourse. Get involved in applying the pressure. Get involved in sending those voice notes to 063-408-8863. We'll be back again with Roy.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Friday morning on your Feel Good Breakfast Show. We're still hanging out with veteran news editor Roy Simpson, and he's here to unpack what is happening and how it affects all of us, especially in terms of the news headlines that we've seen over the past week. And now it's time to tap into the international news headlines that we have seen. Of course, we encourage your thoughts. Send us your voice notes to 063-408-8863. Now, can you believe it? It was today a year ago that we all woke up to the news that Russian troops had invaded Ukraine to battle. And in the run-up to today's anniversary, both the President of America, President Joe Biden, and Russian President Vladimir Putin have given speeches. And I guess a point to start off with is, what have we learned about the state of the war from those speeches?
They were important speeches, and they contained exactly what we're looking for, kind of the opportunity to glean what the future might be like. And I'm afraid it's not good news. So you had Joe Biden talking about Russia will never have a victory in Ukraine, that NATO's commitment to Ukraine is unwavering. So very much talking about depth of commitment and a long-term commitment. At the same time then, or just prior to that, you had Vladimir Putin addressing his State of the Nation address, and in that, really laying down the sort of the propaganda that's been running the whole way through this, but doubling down on everything. So talking about the West being intent on crushing Russian values and putting the West as this godless organization that was intent on pedophilia, coming in to try and crush the Russian culture. So really framing them as the bad guys and Russia as the good guys. Also talking about there's no need to have a witch hunt, by which you could read, at any point I could have a witch hunt. So that's kind of old Soviet thinking, really just regressive stuff coming from him. And also the statement that they're in it for the long haul. Yeah. So you've got both sides talking about commitment to an end goal that is different from one another, that they're not mutually compatible in any way. So what we glean from this is, man, today's a year anniversary, but we're probably in for a long, long war here. Neither side wants to back down.
A couple of years, actually. It sounds like it's a rock and a hard place in terms of the standpoints from both parties' perspective right now.
Absolutely. Complete
I'm
hardening.
seeing, like, is this the re-emergence of world superpowers that brought us the most devastating world wars that we've ever seen? I mean, I don't want to be profit do, but I'm just asking, are we going towards that place now? Because I mean, countries are already being pulled in, and you know, pledge your allegiance, stand against this, stand for this.
Yeah.
So we're running those exercises right now with China and Russia, the naval exercises. It's part of the alignment thing. And yes, there's definitely a move globally to go back to the old strategies, to go back to the bipolar world where you have wars with each other. And that's not good. In fact, if we want to take something positive out of this, it would be this. And that is that the veil has been lifted, and we can see it for what it is. We can see that dichotomy is a false dichotomy. It's entirely acceptable for us to have problems with America. We've seen what kind of nation it is with Julian Assange, with Guantanamo Bay, things like that. So we may say we don't want to associate with that. But we can also see clearly through the propaganda that Russia's putting out and the propaganda China's putting out what kind of societies those are. And we're perfectly entitled to say we don't want that either. So we as a country, we as a continent, have this moment in time where we can look at the world. They're trying to actively take the world back to an old dichotomy, and we can say, we don't want to play that game. We want to carve a third way for ourselves. We want to be an agency to change the United Nations. The fact that there's war in Europe means there is need for reform there, and we should be part of reforming the UN, and then we should basically be part of a movement to try and craft peace. And that opportunity's there. It's a little silver lining.
So essentially, as a country, you're giving us that sort of mandate to say we don't necessarily have to subscribe to option A or B.
Absolutely.
We can have our own option, or we don't have to rush into this decision either.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
We don't have to rush
in.
I don't know, Minister of Love and Tenor. I support your mandate, though.
You got my vote?
Well, there we are. A silver lining nonetheless, an opportunity perhaps for Africa to activate its own superpower as the crafters of peace and leading us into the future of what the world could be. There certainly isn't any more time for war. Our children don't need that. The future of this world does not need that. Much appreciated, sir. Always so insightful chatting to you. Hope you enjoyed that as well, but do continue to send us your voice note to 063 408 8863. What do we have coming up now? Start shivering, De Mornay.
Why? What's happening?